Hi, this is Kylie Koo. Welcome to my studio. So this month in the Mixed Media Emporium that I co-host with Nina Ribena, we are focusing on creative envelopes. So here I have a standard envelope, although it is a US size envelope, so it's just under 9.5 inches by I think just over 4 inches. I think this is a standard size in the US. But in centimetres, it's around about 24, just short of 24, by about 10.5 centimetres. Now, these envelopes were actually sent to me a number of years ago when I did a Happy Mail swap with someone. And they'd included just some plain envelopes. I think this had actually already been gessoed, so it was all ready for paint. If you were doing something like this, a very light coat of gesso would just help strengthen the envelope. So I'm taking two colours to start with, burnt umber and this Naples yellow, and I'm literally just going to dry brush on these paints. I may add a bit of white if I feel it needs lightened at this stage, but I will be lightening it as I go on later. So what I'm actually doing today is making what might be described as a mail art envelope. It could be used for Happy Mail, sending something off, doing a swap with someone. This is the type of envelope I would use, although more often now I would actually include this in another envelope. But it could actually go through the mail like this. So I've taken those two colours, and you'll see I'm literally just scrubbing it in with the dry brush. I do want that bit of kind of texture looking from the envelope as well, so not looking to get a smooth finish. And this really is just my kind of base coat for what I'm doing. So just those two colours, blending them together but not trying to get an even effect. Now I will leave a link to the Mixed Media Emporium in the description box below, along with a link to Nina's video this week. So just going around the edges with a bit more of the burnt umber, just emphasising those edges a little bit more at this stage. And what I'll do is I'll dry this now just using a heat tool, and then I'll flip the envelope over and I'll do the back. You'll see there's little bits of paint on that already. That's fine. I'm doing this in exactly the same colour. And I'm just going over and onto the inside of the envelope. At this stage I'm not entirely certain how I'm going to finish the inside of it off, but I know that doing this will take the paint across all the white edges, and whatever way I decide to do it, this will work out fine. And once that's done, I will dry this side as well. Once that's done, I'm going to add some collage to it. Now initially I thought about using a glue stick, but I do actually use some matte medium. Just going to go through my little scraps, my little box there, my little packet. Some of these pieces have stamped images. That's where I've been stamping something before and then just stamp off onto, for example, an old book page. So I'm just going to rummage through those little scraps and pull out a few things of interest. As I say, the paint that I'd put down already was simply a base coat. So I pulled a few things out. There was actually a stamp design there that I could add on as a stamp if I wasn't obviously sending it through the mail. So all I'm going to do now is to start gluing these in place using the matte medium. And because I've already got the coat of paint on, the envelope's not going to get too wet by applying this. That's the thing sometimes with envelopes, especially if they're very thin paper, you have to be careful just not to kind of saturate it. So going to put these on place, both on the front and also in the back. Again, this is just about creating a bit of interest, and I approach this in the way that I would any kind of mixed media piece of art, whether it was an art journal page or a canvas or whatever. I will often use collage, and that's what I was doing with this envelope. And you'll see that bit with the birds on the top piece. I just placed it so that when the envelope's closed, the birds would be the right way up, but that doesn't matter. Now taking this stamp, which came from Paper Artsy, it's a kind of script stamp, and really just going over. Again, this is just for interest in the background. I will be putting a layer of gesso on shortly, and what I'm hoping is that I don't put it on too thick, and that therefore some of the collage and some of the stamping will be seen through this. So quite liking the colour of that envelope as is, but I do want to blend all those pieces in so that they become background. But you know, I'd be quite happy to send something off in that sort of envelope. I wouldn't necessarily send it through the mail like that, but I would happily include it with something that I was sending to somebody. I think just as is, it might be a little bit difficult to see where names and addresses were. So just going to take the gesso, and you'll see again I'm just applying it in a kind of scrubby motion, not looking to put too thick a coat on, but getting a layer right across it, and it doesn't need to be even. In fact, if it adds a bit of texture to it, all the better. So just doing that. Then what I decide to do, as far as possible these days, I try not to use things like paper towel, but for this it was the best thing for me to use. I could have used my old rag, but it's got lots of paint on it. I was likely to transfer something. So I've just taken this piece of kitchen towel, just a small piece, and I'm just lifting up some of the gesso. This will help it dry quicker. It also gives a bit of texture to it that's come off the pattern on the paper, and it just means it's not too thick at this stage. I can go on and add more layers if I want. So you'll see I've done it on both sides there, but I decide I want to knock it further back into the background. So I do the exact same thing once again, just putting on another layer of gesso, scrubbing it on. It's a very old paintbrush. Bristles are quite well worn in it, and it's really handy for just doing something like this. And again, I'll take that same piece of paper towel, and you know, eventually that will likely end up in a piece of collage, so it won't be wasted. So lifting that again, and again you can see the little bits of pattern that's come off the paper, and I'll do that front and the same on the back, making sure I dry before I turn over. So I'm taking these stamps, polymer stamps. I was going to have the butterflies in a row there, but decided that it just didn't feel quite right, so just kind of offsetting them and having the bigger one in the corner. So putting them in the position that I want, and then I'll take my acrylic block just to make sure I keep the same position. Hopefully they will stick, which they did do, they don't always. And I'm just taking some sepia ink this time, and this is a permanent ink. Now that's the one thing to watch if you're putting an envelope like this into the mail. If you have used anything that's water soluble, you do run the risk of perhaps the envelope getting wet and the design being spoiled. So I would suggest not using anything that's water soluble, or if you do, then you use a fixative to make sure that it all stays in place. So I now have my butterflies stamped on, and what I now want to do is to start to think about bringing some colour back into it. I like that kind of faded background, but at the moment it's just feeling a little bit too plain for my liking. But I'll give it a good dry, just setting those ink stamps at the moment. I want now to put a wash of colour over the envelope, but I very much want to give the envelope an aged effect. So I'm going to put one or two kind of dark spots on it, just using the umber again, the burnt umber, and I'm just going to dab it in a few places round the edge and use this other scrubby brush just to kind of blend that in a little bit. Really just looking for an aged effect, as if this envelope's kicked around for a while, it's had kind of water damage or whatever, just trying to create that vintage aged effect. Then introducing the Naples yellow again, just trying to blend them together. Because I'd used so little, it dried quite quickly, so I will in a moment just add a little bit of water to my brush before I do the overall wash. But really just about now building up a bit of colour onto the envelope, bringing that back in. And this is a way I like to work, to have colour, to bring collage in, to knock that into the background, and then to reintroduce some colours, especially if I've liked them before. You know, if I hadn't liked them so much, I might have introduced other colour at this point, but I did feel that this gave a nice edged effect. So you'll see I'm taking my paints there, and they're a little bit blended, but using a lot of water just to give it, as I say, give it a wash. Again, just using a kind of scrubby effect, not looking to get it even, and then just using that same piece of kitchen roll just to lift that, to blend it a little bit, but also to lift it. And I'll just do this back and forward until I get it to the point where I'm happy with it. Going back in for a bit of the Naples yellow, kind of keeping the burnt umber around the edge and introducing the Naples yellow more into the centre. Just giving that effect that, you know, aged documents will often look darker around edges and little spots here and there on the main document or the envelope or whatever. And again, just dabbing that off, and I'll dry it and then I'll do the exact same to the back. So I'm taking these Faber-Castell Pitt pens, and these are all flesh tones, and I'm just going to start to take this one around the edges, and I just blend it in with my finger. And when you look at it closely, it starts to pick up some of the lines from the gesso and the paints underneath, you know, that first layer of paint and then the layers of gesso, and where it touches pieces of collage, it picks up the edges of them as well. So I'm going to go right around that, just showing you a bit more here, trying to do it in a way that isn't even, so some places I'll do kind of thicker and some places that little bit thinner, but all the way just blending it out with my finger. Doing it along the fold line of the envelope as well. And again, this is all just about creating that aged effect. So just going all the way round the envelope, and then I'll do the exact same on the back. Just folding it over to see the full effect on the front. So both sides done, and I think now, well, maybe I could introduce just a little bit of colour. I think this was called something like a medium flesh. The first one I think was dark flesh, this one's medium flesh, and I'll also use a light flesh in a moment. And I'm just adding the tiniest hint of colour to the butterflies. So I put a little bit on and then immediately blend it out. Not looking to colour them in as such. You'll see I just put a little spot on and then blend. Not looking to stay within any particular lines or anything like that at all. And this just gives that tiny hint of colour. So I then take this one and I'm just going to go a little bit around the butterflies. Again, just blending, it's very light, very subtle. It's almost blending in with the background, but you can just see it there and no more. And it just helps the butterfly stand out just that little bit. I do then, however, add it to other bits on the envelope, both the front and the back. And again, this is just about building up the different colours, the different tones on here. So now that that's done, I'm going to take my sepia ink and I'm going to go around all the edges, again both back and front, putting a good layer of that on. I don't mind that it's slightly uneven, and in fact that's kind of what I'm looking for. So come now to the inside of the envelope. So I looked at taking a piece of paper and perhaps lining it, but decided against that. I actually liked the way the colours were sitting inside it. So all I do is to use the paint that I've got and do a very light wash across the inside. I'm not looking to make this a thick coat, I'm not looking to get it right down. I just want that colour that when the envelope's opened, it can actually be seen. And there we have it. I did add a little bit more of the Naples yellow just to thicken it up slightly. So making sure that I give it a good dry all over. And then once that's done, really at the very finishing touches, and in the same way that I would do with an art journal page or with a painting of some description, I just want to give it a bit of a frame. And all I've taken here is a normal biro pen. This isn't any particular pen, just a cheap pen. I'm just doing a little bit of a frame around it. I'll do the same on the back. To me, it just adds something. It's just the way I like to finish things off. I'll go right round there. And, you know, as I've said in previous videos, this is the type of project you can adapt to your own personal style. So if you wanted to seal this, you could put some double-sided tape. If you're putting something in it, send off some double-sided tape, and that would seal quite nicely. Sender's address on the back and who it's to on the front there. Now if you've done something where the envelope's maybe a little bit dark, the way I deal with that is I take a little bit of white paint or a bit of gesso. I just put it onto my finger and then I just really just drag it out. I'm not looking to do, you could put a block on, you know, if you wanted, you could draw a rectangle and paint within that. I like to do something that fits in with the rest of the envelope, and in this case I'm just dragging my finger back and forward, and that would just lighten it enough to put any name and address on it, and yet it still fits in with the overall style of the envelope. So as I say, links below to the Mixed Media Emporium Facebook group and to Nina's video. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I should be back next week with another creative envelope project. So as always, I thank you so much for watching. I thank you for your subscriptions and for hitting the like button. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.